Hello and welcome to this summary video for the workshop I ran a short while ago, today on the 4th of July. And I've mentioned this before if you've seen these videos. I do not record the live sessions themselves because I want to focus on the live aspect and the interaction in those live sessions. But I always record a summary afterwards to share it with those who attended and also those who maybe had signed up and wanted to attend but couldn't on the day. So, without further ado, as they say, what's the topic of today's workshop? And I'll start by showing you a common misconception. For example, let's say we have a string, hello, and multiply it by 2. And you may already be familiar what multiplication by 2 means when we have a string is we concatenate the string with itself. And if this number was 3 or 4 or 5, we would have so many copies of it. Now, if you're comfortable with object-oriented programming, you will be familiar with the special methods, the dunder methods they're sometimes called. And often you might have seen this described as, this is exactly the same as when Python calls the dunder mul for multiplication method directly. And you think, there you go, you see, proof, they're exactly the same. That is, it's not incorrect, but it doesn't show the whole picture. There's more happening behind the scenes than that expression is exactly the same as that expression. So that's what we're going to be exploring in this video. As you know, I like to dig a bit underneath the surface and see what's happening behind the scenes, if you like. I'll show you another sort of early sign of this, and then we'll dive into these. Let's try to add the integer 5 with the string for the character 5. Python doesn't allow you to do this, and it says, no, unsupported operand type plus int and string. Good. What if I swap them over? Oops, not that. I meant string 5 multiplied by, I didn't mean to do that either. I'm pressing all the wrong buttons. There we go. I think my computer is giving up on me. I meant to do plus there. I think my brain is giving up on me. I meant to compare integer 5 plus string 5 with string 5 plus integer 5. It doesn't work, but it gives me a different error message. And yes, you might say, this one we're doing integer plus string. So if you're comfortable with how plus works and these operators work, we're calling the special method for addition, dunder add, for integer here, whereas here we're calling the dunder method for add for the string. They're different methods because they're different classes. And you might think, that's what's happening, and you're right. But again, this sheds light on something a bit more interesting that's happening here. Okay, let me refresh the console. Let me go back to these two. Hello times 2, it works. How about 2 times hello? It also works. So are these two exactly the same? Well, it seems like it, right? Doesn't matter if I do hello times 2 times hello, they're giving me the same answer, right? Let's test whether this is the same as that. Hello times 2 doesn't give me the same as hello dot dundermul 2. Yes. How about the other way around? Now we have to be careful here. I can't say 2 dot dunder mul hello. Do you know why I can't do that? This is a syntax issue. If I do this, it's going to give me an invalid decimal literal because the dot after a number is used to create a float, right? A number with a decimal point. So I cannot call the dot mul method directly on an integer. There are a number of ways of doing it. You can put it inside parentheses. This is probably the neatest way to do it. And then it works. There you go. Notice it doesn't give us the error it gave us before. Or rather, there's not an error. It doesn't give us the output. It gives us not implemented. Remember that 2 times hello works. It gives us hello. But 2, and then we call the dunder mul, the special method for multiplication with hello, does not give us the same value. And this is, we're starting to see how there is something more happening there. Incidentally, if you don't like doing it there, of course you can assign it to a variable. Sometimes, and this is maybe a bit less readable, you can actually put a space and then you can put .mul hello. The space is enough to tell Python, look, this is not a number with a decimal point, therefore the dot in this case means I want to access an attribute, in this case a method for .mul. Okay, clearly something is happening here. Let's see what's happening in this case. Now, and let's take this example, 2 times hello. Python does the following. It first finds out, let's do the one with the parentheses, whether the first operand here is the integer 2. So it says, okay, I've got this symbol, this asterisk. I know I need to go and look for the .mul under method for an object of type integer. So the integer .mul, and then whatever comes after the star is passed as an argument to $mul. And Python says, okay, let me try that. Ah, shame, there is no answer. Not implemented means that this method has actually returned this not implemented constant in Python. So it specifically said what .mul does in integer is if the data type we're trying to multiply is not one that an integer can multiply, it says not implemented. So that's a sign that it doesn't exist. There's no way whoever wrote the .mul for integer did not implement how to multiply it with a string. But Python does not give up. It says, okay, let me try one more thing before I give up and say, sorry, I can't do this. Let me reverse them around. Let me see whether I can take hello. Now, in order to check the reverse, there is another set of dunder methods we can use, special methods, and these are the reverse. So in this case, instead of mul, I want reverse mul, reverse multiplication. And that is rmul. And then I'm reversing them, right? So it's the string.rmul2. And this gives me an answer. What this does is the string method, notice that the reverse multiplication is now a string method. We've reversed the roles of the operands. We've taken the second operand, we've swapped it over. We say, okay, let's call a method on this one. And let's call the reverse multiplication. Does it exist, first of all? It does, because otherwise it would raise an error. And can it deal with an integer? And the answer is yes. And in this particular case, and this happens often, not always, but often, rmul does the same thing as mul. So we can see here, if I say help string mul, it returns self.value. So whatever self is multiplied by value. And if I ask for help on rmul, the reverse one, in this case it's exactly the same, return value.self. So it does exactly the same thing, right? It makes sense. All we're saying is the reverse multiplication, if you need to rely on this reverse, then it's the same as taking a string multiplied by an integer, which exists. We know that we can multiply a string by an integer. The problem was integer multiplying integer times string. That's what's not implemented, but the reverse is. So that's what rmul is doing. And this also, let's take another example before we write our own class. Let's take a list multiplied by 2. This works. Now, what does Python do in this case? It takes the list and checks whether a list has the .mul, so whether it has $mul method, special method, and whether it can accept an integer. In this case, the answer is yes. So lists have $mul defined, and they can deal with integers, no problem. So Python doesn't need to go and check further, right? The first thing it checked, it worked, good. How about the other way around? 2 times a list. The answer is still the same, 345, 345. But what does Python do in this case? It takes the integer 2 and tries to call the $mul method, which exists, but can it accept a list? The answer is no. You can see not implemented. And this is where Python says, calm down, I'm not giving up yet. let me try the reverse. So the reverse is you take the list, which was the second operand, but now I'm bringing it, if you like, the front. And I'm going to try and call the reverse multiplication. Oops, where's autocomplete when you need it? There you go. With the integer 2. And this works. Once again, same logic, right? It has exactly the same definition as the multiplication. There may be instances where the reverse multiplication is not the same. Not everything, a times b is the same as b times a. There are instances where that's not true. And in that case, you'll have to deal with it accordingly. But let's stick with nice and easy cases here where it doesn't matter. Okay, let's finish this summary video by defining our own class. And I'm going to keep this simple, right? I'm going to define a class for a pair of numbers. If you're mathematically inclined, and this could be a vector, for example. But I'm going to keep it simple. It's a pair of numbers. Doesn't matter. And let's define its init. And let's say it's going to have 2 parameters. Now, I don't usually like using single letter variables, but I'm inspired from the mathematical applications here, where it is okay to use sort of a, b, or x, y, or whatever it is. But if this was representing some real class, you may want to use more descriptive names there if appropriate. And not delf, it's self.a equals a and self.b equals b. Okay, so we're creating that. Normally, I'll go this super quickly here. Normally, we like to also have the wrapper, the string representation. If you're only going to do one of them, this is the one you want to do. And this normally returns a string that has the expression you can use to recreate the object. So in this case, how would I recreate this object? I would say it's pair, open brackets, then self.a, comma, self.b, close brackets. Let's check it out. So let's create a pair, 3, 5, and if I print pair, because I've got the wrapper there, let's run that, I get pair, open brackets, 3, 5, because that's what I created there. Brilliant. Now, what if I try to multiply pair by 3? Type error. Unsupported operand types for multiplication. I cannot multiply pair by int. Why? Because Python is looking for the following. It's saying, okay, you've given me pair times 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is to see whether pair.mul, in fact, I need to, autocomplete doesn't help me there because it doesn't exist, pair.mul3. So this, the first part of it is equivalent to, does this work? Let me comment this one. I'm going to break it down. This is what happens first. Now, .mul doesn't exist. Pair object has no attribute .mul. Of course, I did not define it. It's not there. I only defined init and wrapper. So that doesn't work. Let's comment it out because I want to be able to run the code. Of course, Python does not give up. It's going to say, let me try the other way around, right? Let me take 3 and call the reverse mul on pair. And this says not implemented. So the reverse multiplication special method for integers doesn't deal with pair. Of course it doesn't. I've just created class pair. How could the integer class deal with an object of type pair? So it says not implemented. And at this point it says, okay, look, I've tried everything I could, right? I've tried pair.mul3. Then I've tried the reverse, 3.rmul, reverse mul pair. One raised an error. I caught it for you, don't worry, you don't have to worry about it. The other one gave me not implemented. Therefore, I now give up. Unsupported operand of type blah blah blah. Okay, let's start solving this problem. Let's define mul. And notice that autocomplete there gave me self and other. The mul method will take, so whenever I have pair asterisk 3, I'm calling the mul dunder method for pair, which is my pair object. So self is my pair object. And then it needs other. Other is whatever comes after the asterisk, which in this case is going to be the number 3. Let us put a check there. If other is an instance of, let's just say it's an integer for now, right? We can make it a float later as well. So if other is an instance of integer, then I want you to do something. And I want rmul to return another per object. Now, I'm going to create a new per object, right? It's going to have its first value is whatever a is now multiplied by other. So that's how I want multiplication to work, right? So if I have 3 there, I want to say 3 times 3. So the first number in my per should be 9, and the second number should be self.b times other. So take whatever the second value is, 5, multiply it by 3. So that should be 15. Good. Let's check that this works. Brilliant. Per times 3 now gives me a per object 9, 15. It worked. And since I've put in an if there, I should probably put an else and raise a type error. So if other is not an integer, we'll make it also a float in a bit. But let's for now stick with integer only. And the type error could be, for example, per object can only be multiplied by an integer, whatever you want to write. So for example, now if I try to multiply by 3.1, it says no, per object can only be multiplied by an integer because I have raised a type error with that error message. Good. In fact, let's make it now if other is an instance of integer or float. We can put a tuple there, integer or float, either of them is fine. And now you can see it works. Why? Because we can multiply 3 by 3.1 and 5 by 5 and 1, right? It doesn't really matter. So now we can say by a number there probably. Okay. To keep things nice and simple, let me stick with integers, however. This works good. A reminder, what does Python do when it sees per times 3? It will try this one first. Per dot dundermul 3. But now the per object, the per class, has a dundermul method. Therefore, this works. 3 is an integer, so it's going to work and return that per. You can see that gives me the same. I'm running it, same output. It doesn't need to go and check anything else, right? It works. If the first one works, that's good. Good. Let's go back to per times 3. This works. But what if I want to try to do 3 times per? In this case, again, this depends on the class you're defining, right? But in this case, it seems like it shouldn't matter whether I'm taking a pair of numbers and multiplying it by 3, or take 3 and then multiply it by a pair of numbers. I sort of want the same thing to happen here. Good. Unfortunately, when I run this, unsupported operand of type for star, int and per. Int is first and the per is second. So even though I have defined what per multiplied by integer means, this is going to rely on, let me redo this. In fact, let me delete them, it's easier. The first thing it's going to try is 3.mul per. Because I have 3 first, star, and then per. So it's going to check the dundermul method, not for per, which is this one. This is a different mul method, which is somewhere else in the Python code base, because this is the dundermul method that belongs to integer. And those people who wrote the integer class did not think of me. They didn't think, oh, let's help Stephen and make sure that he can multiply an integer with a pair. Of course they wouldn't, right? So, pardon me, let me comment that out. This gives me not implemented. So the mul method for integer, when I pass a pair, it says, this is a type I don't know, I can't deal with it, it's not implemented. But Python doesn't give up, remember. It says, okay, let me try the reverse. Per, reverse mul. I'll have to write it in full because autocomplete can't help me yet, it seems there. 3. It's reversing them, right? So instead of 3.mul per, it says, let me take per, but since it's the reverse, per.rmul3. And I'll need to, yeah, that's fine. I can comment it out, it doesn't matter. It's line 21 gave me this error. Per object has no attribute rmul. Of course it doesn't. It only has these three methods. I defined init, wrapper, mul, but I haven't defined reverse mul. Let's fix that. Now, in this case, all I need to do is return self.mul other. What am I doing? I'm saying, look, if you need to use the reverse multiplication, it's the same as if I'm multiplying per with other. So do exactly the same as the forward multiplication. Sometimes this might be different, right? But in this case, we're saying, look, if you have to use the reverse multiplication, it's the same as the forward multiplication. And if I run this now, it works. Notice I'm still running these separately. This still gave me not implemented, but Python then went on and tried that one. Here I'm breaking them down manually, right? This is what happens in 3 times per, which I'll run in a second. But per.rmul3 exists. It says go and do mul, and mul does what it does. So let me get rid of those. That's me breaking it down, right? Drum roll. Does this work now? And the answer is it does. Why? Because 3 times per is checking that first. This returns not implemented. So we try the reverse. Good. I'll stop there. The idea here is that when you are writing your own classes, you cannot and should not go and change all the other classes you might need. Certainly you don't want to go and change the integer class, even if you could. So what do you want to do? You want to define all the functionality in your own class, including, if you want, giving the option of multiplying per times 3, or having the option of having 3 times per. That will make your code more flexible, more robust. And in order to do that, you want to let Python know if the forward doesn't work, if 3.mul per returns not implemented or it doesn't work, we try the reverse multiplication. As always, feel free to find me wherever you want to find me, email me or find me on X or LinkedIn or wherever. And ask me any questions you might have. We can carry on the discussion wherever you find me. Bye-bye.